Join with us this morning. Father, we thank you for the price that you paid, the blood that was shed for our sins. You have won us. Grace, you show me grace. You lifted my shame. Draw me with loving kindness. Washed whiter than snow. You have redeemed and made me whole. Let's sing that again. Grace. Grace, you show me grace. You've lifted my shame. Drawn me with loving kindness. Washed whiter than snow. You have redeemed and made me whole. Jesus, you have won me. You have broken every chain with love and mercy. You triumphed over death, and you are worthy of glory and praise. Love, you show me love by leaving your throne, by bleeding and dying on a cross, that wonderful cross that took all my guilt and sin away. Jesus, you have won me. You have broken every chain with love and mercy. You triumphed over death, and you are worthy of glory and praise. Sing, Jesus, you have won me. Oh, Jesus, you have won me. You have broken every chain with love and mercy. You have triumphed over death, and you are worthy of glory and praise. So we shout it out and lift up one voice in worship, sing it out until all the earth can hear it. Jesus is alive and he saves, he rescues and saves. Oh, we shout it out and lift up one voice in worship, sing it out until all the earth can hear it. Jesus is alive and he saves, he rescues and saves. Jesus, you have won me. You have broken every chain with love and mercy. You have triumphed over death, and you are worthy of glory and praise. Oh, Jesus, you have won me. You have broken every chain with love and mercy. You have triumphed over death, and you are worthy of glory and praise. So we shout it out and lift up one voice in worship, sing it out until all the earth can hear it. Jesus is alive and he saves, he rescues and saves. Oh, we shout it out mercy. You've triumphed over death, and you are worthy of glory and praise. Praise your name, Jesus. Jesus, we love you.
There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus.
Break every chain, break every chain, break every chain.
There's power.
There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. Break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. Break every chain, break every chain, break every chain.
All sufficient sacrifice,
So freely given, such a
price bought,
our redemption, heaven's gates sing wide. All sufficient. All sufficient sacrifice,
so
freely given, such a
price bought,
our redemption, heaven's gates swing wide.
swing wide.
There is power in the name of Jesus.
There's an army
Rising up. There's power.
There's an army
rising up to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain.
There's an army.
There's an army rising up.
There's an army.
There's an army rising up. There's an army rising up to break every chain, 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 break every chain.
There is power in the name of Jesus.
There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, 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 break every chain.
There's power in Jesus' name.
There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. Break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. To break every
every chain, break 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 every chain.
More than enough, Lord.
Love you, Lord Jesus. We praise you. With all of our
Magnify your name, Lord. When you walk into the room, everything changes. Darkness starts to tremble at the light that you bring. When you walked into the room, every heart starts burning. 'Cause nothing matters more than just to sit here at your feet and worship you. Oh, we worship you, Lord. We worship you. When you walked into the room, everything changes. Everything changes. Darkness starts to tremble at the light that you bring. When you walked into the room, every heart starts burning. Nothing matters more than just to sit here at your feet and worship you. We worship you, Lord. We worship you, Lord. Sing, we love you. We love you. We'll never stop. We can't live without you, Jesus. We love you. Can't get enough. All this is for you, Jesus. It's all for you, Lord. It's all for you, Jesus. When you walked into the room, sickness starts to vanish. Every hopeless situation ceases to exist. And when you walk into the room, the dead begin to rise, 'cause there is resurrection life in all you do. We love you. We'll never stop. We can't live without you, Jesus. We love you. We can't get enough. All this is for you, Jesus. We love you. We'll never stop. We can't live without you, Jesus. We love you. We can't get enough. All this is for you, come and consume us, God. All we are, we give you permission. Our hearts are yours. We want you. We want you. Come and consume us, Lord. Come and consume us, God. All we are, we give you permission. Our hearts are yours. We want you. We want you.
Come and consume God.
Come consume us, God. All we are, we give you permission. Our hearts are yours. We want you. We want you. Come and consume us, God. All we are, we give you permission. Our hearts are yours. We want you. We want you. We love you. And we'll never stop. We can't live without you. Jesus, we love you. Can't get enough. All this is for you. Jesus, we love you. We'll never stop. We can't live without you. Jesus, we love you. We can't get enough. All this is for you. Jesus.
We love you. We worship you. Come, O God. Consume all that we are, O God. We present ourselves a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to you, God, for this is our spiritual life. We present ourselves, God. We will not conform any longer to the pattern. Lord, we've come to be transformed in the renewing of our mind. Holy Spirit, come. Holy Spirit, come. We're welcome in this place. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, Lord, as we stand in your presence, we stand in awe of who you are. May we never lose that sense of awe, that sense of holy fear. For our God is a consuming fire. Lord, as we approach your word this morning, I pray that you would give us reverent hearts and open ears. And hunger to hear the word of the Lord. We love you, Lord Jesus. In your name, we say together. Amen. You may be seated. Before I even get started this morning, and I want to say this to you, and I'm not saying this to be a smart aleck, I'm not saying this for any other reason than just to say it. There's probably going to be plenty of opportunity, the message the Lord has put upon my heart today, for everybody in the room to get offended. But would you do me a favor? Rather than allowing yourself to be offended, would you allow yourself to be challenged? Rather than allow yourself to be condemned, would you allow yourselves to be convicted? The thing about our relationship with God is it is an ever-growing and expanding thing. Jesus gave all of himself to us upon a cross, and when we accept Christ, we have accepted all that he is, but it takes time for him to get all of us. And the only way that happens is if when we approach the Word of God, whether I'm preaching or you're reading it at home, or whether it's in our times corporate together or in your private worship, if you're opening yourself up and saying, God, would you change me through your word today? I want to encourage you to fight the temptation to think of who else needs to hear this message. And just assume that God is speaking to you today. Because, church, rest assured of this. He has preached it to me before I brought it to you. And I've taken it very personal. We're going to continue, go back to this Jesus in Genesis. I want to start with a question today. And the question is, what is sin? In the Old Testament, which was written in the Hebrew language, the word for sin literally means offense. We offend somebody. That's a sin. The New Testament was written in Greek, and the word used for sin there means to miss the mark. It's an archery term. In essence, sin is that which keeps us from living up to the image of God that we all have. Sin is the distance between where we are and God's perfection. We all have it. If anyone thinks that they are without sin, they're a liar. The word says the truth is not in them. Before sin, man and woman existed without guilt, without shame, without fear, without sickness. They shared an intimate relationship with one another, with creation, and with God Himself. God would come and walk with them in the cool of the day in the garden. Shared personal relationship. What a beautiful thing that must have been. Just so you know, God is not offended by sin because of the effect it has upon Him. God is holy. God is perfect. His character cannot be changed, and it cannot be affected in any way by sin. He's God. I suppose that the first sin ever committed would have been the rebellion of Lucifer. Lucifer, also known to us as Satan, before his fall was among the most beautiful angels in heaven. I've heard that he was the worship leader of heaven. His beauty unmatched, but at some point and somehow he chose rebellion from God, and he took a third of the angels in heaven with him. But can I tell you, from the moment he left, God was no less God. No, God is not offended because of what sin does to him. God is offended because of sin's effect upon his creation and what it does to us. The first consequence of sin is that it divides us from him. It's a spiritual death. It's worse than physical death because it's eternal. Obviously, this grieves God who created us to know him. Sin not only separates us from God, but it separates us from one another. We were created to live in a common unity or community. It's how you are wired at the core of your being. You were wired for community with one another. But sin divides us. God is still God in all of His glory, with or without us. True. He's been there from eternity. I've only been here 62 years. But we cannot be fully the people we were created to be without Him. We were wired for a relationship with God. And friends, sin destroys that. I started the sermon with a question this morning because the story of Noah is the story of what sin does to God's creation. I want to read for you the story from Genesis chapter 6, beginning in verse number 1. It says, when human beings began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Ladies, that's never changed. You're beautiful creatures. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that He had made human beings on the earth. And His heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground. For I regret that I had made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Direct your word this morning. Speak to our hearts. Send your Holy Spirit. God, we pray. The sons of God saw the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. There's been a lot of discussion over the century and millennia about the exact meaning of that sentence, and specifically the phrase, the sons of God. The Hebrew word there for that, the sons of God, could actually be interpreted as angels, indicating that demons were actually impregnating women. Under this idea or thought is the idea that Satan was trying to destroy the seed of Adam that would eventually crush his head. My problem with that theory is that demons are neither male nor female, and they have no ability to procreate. However, it is possible that demons could have possessed men to carry out that task. We know that the end result was this race of giants, almost superhuman beings. Others believe that the sons of God refers to those descendants of Adam's son, Seth. These were supposed to be the godly, those who would lead, those who were still devoted to God, devoted in worship to Him. But at some point, they too began to just take whoever they chose. This would make more sense to me in light of the covenant that later God made with Israel when he told them that they should not marry outside of their faith. And the covenant also to Christians today is that we should not marry outside of our faith. We should not be unequally yoked with an unbeliever. Young people that are not married, listen to me. The first thing you're looking for in your spouse that you'll spend your life for is a follower of Christ, period. Until that question is solved, you don't need anything else. Once you know you have that, then you can begin to look deeper. It doesn't work when we're unequally yoked. These things have been debated by people a lot more intelligent than me. People a lot more spiritual than me have argued about the meaning of those words, so I'm not going to resolve that issue today. But what I do want to point out is the obvious outcome of these unsacred unions, whatever they were. The result was a world overrun with sexual perversion, violence, and overt evil. Humans had become entirely self-serving, each one doing whatever pleased themselves, pursuing their own pleasure, pursuing their own power. And instead of being a united community, manipulation, control, and using people for their own selfish gain became the common culture. To the point, the Word says that God regretted He had made them. Every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Let me add another verse, a brief quote from Jesus himself in Matthew 24:37, when it says, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." I included these words so that we might see that he foretold of another day that God's mercy would reach the point of judgment. And that once again, God is going to judge the earth and the inhabitants thereof. Just like he did in the days of Noah. What did the world look like in the days of Noah? Violence was rampant. These heroes of old, these men of violence and war. We live in a culture today that has no respect for the value of human life or the image of God that is possessed in that human life. The violence that is defining our culture today is a demonic attack on the image of God in each and every one of us. Think of the violence that has overcome not only our city, not only our nation, but the world today. Think of the wars that rage when we think that we've made so much progress, and yet it just seems to get bloodier and bloodier. Think of what's been going on in Ukraine for the last 2 years. Think of what's been going on in Gaza for the last 6 months. Think of the violence that pervades the earth, the terrorism that seems to crop up everywhere, the mass killings we see in our own nation on a regular basis. The news seems filled with violence. Just 2 weeks ago, in Rockford, Illinois, 2 weeks in the very neighborhood where Pastor Matt and Michelle used to live, a man high on dope and hallucinating attacked a crowd of people with a knife, killing 4 people and injuring scores others. We've suffered this violence in our own city. Our own church has been touched, has been impacted by the violence that comes into our city. Mindless, senseless killings and murders. Violence marks our nation. And why wouldn't it? For a nation that endorses the killing of unborn babies by the millions. Every child ever conceived or the image of God. But we sit idly by while millions of those babies are butchered in their mother's womb, sucked out piece by piece. We have people in our nation that want to make that legal all the way up to the moment of birth. We have people in our nation that think you should be able to do that within days after the birth. Violence. I would say look at our inner cities, but you don't have to look at our inner cities. It's in the country. It's in our small communities. It's everywhere. It's not just America. It's throughout the world. We're a violent, violent people. The crime that has come upon our nation is unfathomable. And to think that there are those that are crying for the erasing of the police, that we need less law enforcement, and people that are in favor of people will commit heinous crimes and within days are back on the streets to commit them again. Somebody in their evil, wicked mind has decided that this is intelligent. Violence pervades the earth today. The world is staggering because of this violence. Sexual perversion. Friends, listen to me. Sex is a gift given by God to be experienced by one man and one woman in one covenant for one lifetime. Let me say that again. Sex designed by God for His creatures. One man, one woman, one covenant for a lifetime. Through sex, two people become one. There's something very deep and spiritual about the ties that bring us together in the confines of marriage. There's something sacred about sex as it is defined by God. Outside of God's definition, it causes pain, brokenness that may never heal. You don't have to turn far these days to hear the horrors of human trafficking. We saw this so prevalent in the nation that we once lived in, only to come back and find out that they say that the United States is the worst on earth. Children captured from their homes, sold into slavery, objects to be abused by perverted people who have abandoned God. Sexual molestation. In 35 years of ministry, my friends, what I have learned is that the number, especially of women, but it's not limited to women, the number of women and boys who were sexually molested as children is staggering. The percentage would blow you away. And yet many of you sitting here today know exactly what I'm talking about because you've been there. It may have been a sibling or a cousin or neighbor or babysitter. God forbid it may have been your father or grandfather. But I know that in this room there are people whose lives have been wrecked by some pervert who saw them for his own personal gain. And I can only say to you that the Lord and the Lord of Love can fix what's broken in you. Only God can heal what a man has destroyed. I think back at the story not too many years ago when at one of our major universities, a very famous and popular coach in football was found. We found out that they had known for years. Those around him all knew it. For years, this man had been molesting boys at a football camp. For years, this was going on, and people knew it. The people around him knew it was happening, and they didn't say anything. I remember the testimony of one man. He said, I heard it one time. I came in and I could hear it going on in the shower, and I yelled at him, and I told him to stop, and I left. I want to tell you something, friend. I walk into the locker room and I hear it. I'm stringing you up. I'm not walking out of the room to let you to continue to abuse that little boy. And any cowardly man that would do that is truly demonic and possessed. But that's what our world has become. Sitting there going, well, I've never done those things. Hang on. Men, let's talk about pornography. It's rampant. Billions and billions and billions of dollars are made every year on pornography. Much of that exploiting sex slaves, not people who have chosen their job. I know this sermon's heavy this morning. Trust me, it was heavy when it came through my heart too. But these are the days of Noah. These are the days we live in. Days that would grieve God's heart so much that he would regret that he even made us. Men, I say men. I don't think pornography is a problem limited to men anymore. Every time you look at that, you are belittling your wife, you're belittling your mother, you're belittling your sister, you're belittling every woman in this church. It's not a harmless sin. It's not something to just be entertained in the privacy of your room, and it's not hurting anybody. It's destroying people. You are gazing upon something that was created by God and for God, and you're using it for your own stupid pleasure. God forbid that anybody that calls themselves a follower of Christ. But there's men in this room. I don't know who they are, but you know who you are. Wake up. It's not harmless. Homosexuality is a perversion of God's order. I want to say very clearly, I've known and had friends growing up that were homosexual. They had tendencies that were there when they were very young. I don't pretend that it's all about just sexual choice. There's people that from a very young age and perhaps birth struggle with very unhealthy and wrong desires. But the cure for illness is not to tell them they're stuck with that for the rest of their life. I'm sorry you have cancer, just live with it. The homosexual community does not need an affirming church to tell them that they're okay and watch them live in their misery. The homosexual needs a church to stand up and say, Jesus can make you well. There is power in the blood of Jesus. You can be free, and my friend, I will walk with you. We hear stories of drag queens doing story times in our grade schools. It's overt evil. The inclinations of their heart were only evil all the time. The transgenderism is a demonic attack on the identity of people. Gender fluidity, all these words that we have come into our lexicon just in recent years. Who would have ever thought that we would have had come to a day when you couldn't ask somebody, what is a woman, and get a clear answer? Who would have ever known that that would become an issue? And yet today, it's not just an issue, it's the issue. Because my mentoring at students at school, I get communication from the school, and it's funny, and I'm not condemning teachers, I'm talking about a system. When I get an email from a teacher, and I know Dave goes through this at the home too, they're required to put the preferred pronouns. So I know whether to call them he, she, it, or them, or what, or cat, or dog, or... We have a couple just had a baby, the Wittenauers. They moved here from the St. Louis area, the school that they were in, that was in the school in the area that they were in. Their little girl was in, had children identifying as cats, so they were putting litter boxes in the bathroom. You could laugh at that if it wasn't serious. Friends, that's not a laughing matter. These are the days of Noah. Sexual perversion is rampant. And all of it is an attack on identity. Who we are in Christ. Let's confuse them. They don't even know who they are as humans, much less who they are. I could go on talking about financial corruption, about political corruption. It is the destruction of God's order. God created man. Then from the rib of man, he created Eve to be a helpmate. Man was created to lead, to protect, and to provide. Woman was created as his helpmate, not less than, but a complement to. But we have lost divine order. At the core of all this evil that we just talked about is the failure of men to be men. Men, wake up. Brace yourself. A few weeks ago when we were standing in front of Walgreens and praying for an end to abortion, they chose Walgreens because Walgreens is pushing this abortion pill, where people can just go and take a pill, kill your baby, and move on, no problem. You know who was yelling at us, who was hollering at us, who was giving me that one finger salute? You know who was doing it? It was young men. You think they want us taking away that abortion pill? So that they have to start thinking about their actions, so that they have to start being responsible for their actions? Ladies, you think they care one iota about you? You think those young men care anything about you? You think they care anything about your choice? All they're thinking about is their own personal pleasure. Crime is predominantly, not all, of course, but predominantly a male issue. The chaos in our cities today is a direct result of the absence of fathers in the house. The chaos that we face as a nation today is a direct result of men not standing up and being men. Men who want to prolong their childhood and be boys. Instead of standing up and leading and being the men of God that they've been called to be the providers and the protectors and the defenders. Men want to be boys. I used to work for a brief time in Kiwani at Menards. It was a part-time job to support my preaching habit. But I worked there, and I worked with all these men. These are grown men, millennials and Gen Xers, 20s and 30s, men with families. Men with families. My first question is, men with families, why have you settled for an $8 an hour job and not doing it? Now listen, I'm not condemning you. There's work to be done. But shouldn't you want more? But I listened to these guys. These guys talked every day. They get off in their little corners. They never worked. They hung around in the corners and they'd talk about they were up till 4 a.m. playing video games. These are grown men with children. I'm talking about 35, 40-year-old men. I've been up all night long playing video games. Playing video games. Men, they don't want to be men. They're looking out for pleasure. They're looking out for what's best for me. It's not all about 30-year-old playing video games. Come on, men. What are you doing with your time that could be devoted to the gospel of Jesus Christ? What are you wasting your time on? It could be better spent. Over a year ago, the Lord spoke to my heart, said, Todd, I don't care how much you give. I want to know what you do with what you keep. That was a very convicting moment as I begin to evaluate how I spend my time and my money. It's a heavy sermon, my friends, but it's a heavy world we live in. Men have become pleasure-seeking in all forms. You got the macho men, think the big, strong bullies, and want the whole world to admire how awesome they are. Then you got a bunch of sissy men. They don't want to just stand up and be a man. They don't want to stand for something and do something with their lives. And sex and drugs and alcohol. I mentioned the guys that I work with. You know, this is a spiritual issue. Men, listen to me. I'm talking to you today. There's a lack of work ethic amongst our men. Did you know that ranks right up there with all that other garbage I just talked about? God created us to work. There is godliness in a work ethic. Laziness is a sin. Laziness is a sin. God's called us. He's gifted us with work. I'm going to admit, I've been blessed with the greatest job in the world, so it's really not too much work, and I know not everybody gets to do what I do. I also know not all of you would enjoy it as much as I do. But God created you for more. Men refusing to just take responsibility. Men refusing to lead their families in worship. Men refusing to bring the Word of God into the home. Men refusing to be accountable for their actions. Men who just want to be boys. Women, here it comes. There are women, pardon the expression, but there are women who want to emasculate men. They want to take away their manhood. They don't see the need for men. They want to feminize men. They're non-submissive. They're domineering. They're independent to a fault. Now listen, I've got a strong, independent daughter who serves the Lord in a foreign country. She's got an independent streak in her that's strong, but it's submitted to God. There's a difference between that and a married woman who won't compliment her husband, who does not see herself as a helpmate to her husband. I'm not going to yell as much about this because I don't understand women as much as I understand men. I can yell at them. But ladies, if you want your husband to be a man, you have to treat him like a man. I'm not talking about a macho man. I'm talking about respect. I'm talking about looking to him for leadership. And not only in marriage, but in the church, in your lives. The world you are looking at is the world in which Noah lived. There's more to the story. Matt, I never told you this before the service, but if you could just get some music up from the back there. I'm not going to bring the worship team back to it. Genesis 6, verses 8 and 9. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Men, I told you that opportunity to be offended this morning. I'd rather you be challenged. Challenged with this thought. Will you be the one? Will you be the one that'll stand out above the evil and walk faithfully with God? Will you be a man? A godly man? A God-fearing man? A man who puts God at the center of his life, his home, his church, his family? Will you be a man? Women, will you embrace the role of a godly woman who finds her true value and her worth in God? Will you stand above the trends of the day and be godly women, adorned with the beauty that comes with a relationship with Him? Friends, together we can be godly people, and we can complement one another and live selflessly as Christ did. It's not one better than another. It's each one being what God wired us to be and complementing one another, working together for the advancement of the kingdom of heaven. The kids are watching. Where's Jesus in Genesis? Let us not forget the centerpiece of this story. God provided a way out through an ark. And that ark represented Jesus Christ, who carried them to safety. Protected them from the outpouring of God's wrath. Maybe you've heard me say before, and actually talking about a conversation Paul and I had one day, is how do we get all those animals on that boat? Here's what occurred to me at 1:30 this morning. It's not about how to get the animals on the boat. What's important that we're reminded of this morning is there was very few that made it. Many more animals died in the flood. Many more humans died in the flood than those that made it into the ark. The question is not how did he get those on. The question is why weren't there more? In Matthew 7:13 and 14, Jesus had entered through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow is the road that leads to life, and few there be that find it. It's a hard message, church. May this message awaken our hearts to the day in which we live. I've got kids that aren't ready. I've got family that's not ready. I've got neighbors that aren't ready. And they're going to face God's wrath, and that ought to break our hearts. God used a man. His name was Noah. God wants to use you and I. Friends, if you don't know Jesus, it's not a game. Sin is destroying you. It's destroying you just one cut at a time. But the worst part of that destruction is that you will eventually face the wrath of God without Jesus, and you will be eternally damned. If it were not true, I would not say so. But friends, You have an opportunity to know Christ. Would you stand with me? I told the worship team this morning I wasn't going to call them back up here. I'm not calling my deacons forward like I often do for prayer. I don't want anybody to have to work right now. I'm asking everybody in this room to come to this altar this morning and find a place to cry out to God and say, God, forgive me. If you're a man bound by pornography, you need to beg for God's forgiveness. If you're bound by any sin, you need to beg God's forgiveness because His grace is sufficient. Or maybe you're one of those people who was damaged at the hands of another. I know by sheer numbers that there are multiple women, people in this room who've been damaged at the hands of an evil man. Jesus wants to fix you. Would you come? Would you come? Please, I'm asking you now. Just come. It's going to be you and God. You and God. You turn that up just a little bit, Matt. It's you and God. You and God. Just find out a place. Find a place right here. Maybe you need healing. Maybe you need forgiveness. Whatever you need, God is here to meet you. Get on the ark. Jump in the boat. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, God.
give us your heart.